Good evening. Hello, greetings, South Sudan, and welcome to another episode of Gender Talk 211. Today, we go back to a topic that we find ourselves always going back to: feminism in South Sudan. What is feminism? What is African feminism? What is Western feminism? What is the history of feminism? And what is happening with feminism in South Sudan right now and today? With me on the show today is a very, very special guest, feminist and gender activist, Viola Riak. Viola, you're most welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you for being here. I think this is your first time with us in the studio, but it's not your first show for Gender Talk 211, yes?
Yes, and not the first time also on the studio of Advanced Youth Radio. This is my second time.
Okay, well, welcome home. It seems like your family.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
I want to go right into it because I don't want to miss out on anything today. Today we need to unpack this feminism. We need to unpack what exactly is happening with it in South Sudan, and a lot of misunderstandings around feminism in South Sudan as well. Let's start with what's your definition of feminism?
In simple terms, Eva, feminism is a belief that women deserve equal cultural. It's creating a culture that respects women as and men in terms of the rights and opportunities and how they are viewed in the society. So the aim of feminism is actually achievement of total gender equality, a society where nobody is discriminated because of their sex or their religion. So in a nutshell, that's my definition of feminism.
Okay, that's a very broad definition of feminism. There's also different types of feminism based on where you come from, whether it's a region, country, or whatsoever. For example, there's Western feminism, there's African feminism. Can you tell me what your definition of African feminism and Western feminism is, and what is the difference between the two?
So I think let me just elaborate more on this. That feminism, in as it is, it to ensure that the women are given the equality as men. That's what the feminism agenda is. So regardless of where it is being done, whether in Western countries or in African continent, the goal is the same. However, we have different issues. So we have specific issues that affect the African continent that don't affect the Western countries. For example, we still have issues of FGM in African continent that are not in the Western countries. We still have persistent issues of child marriage that are not in the Western countries. We still have issues of wife inheritance in African context, which are not in the Western countries. So what the difference between African feminism is that the African feminists, as they are, and the movement is looking at specific issues that are affecting African continent and how we can deal with it. Whereas in the West now, we don't find girls being discriminated at school because they're girls. Education is for everybody, regardless of your gender, regardless of your race. We find that child marriage is prohibited both in the laws and in the culture of the people. And these are things that we're still struggling with. So in terms of the level we are in, we have a very big gap between African feminists and the Western feminists. Because for us, as the African feminists, and particularly South Sudanese feminists, we're talking about basic fundamental human rights to be a human being. For example, the rights to education, the rights to choose a life partner, the right to be given equal opportunity in terms of government appointment. We're talking about 35%, which, of course, if you were to talk to Western feminists, they are talking about feminist government and what that means. And here we're still struggling on how do we even achieve 35% of women representation in the government. So we have a very big gap. However, it's an emerging movement both at Africa level as a continent and in South Sudan, that we have specific women, and particularly young women, who are coming up openly and discussing and calling themselves feminists, and basically trying to challenge the patriarchal mindsets of our society, that look, women and men have equal rights. The only difference is that we were born in different sexes, that you are a man and I'm a woman, but the fact that I'm a woman or a girl doesn't mean that I have limitations beyond biological limitations. So this is something that is evolving. It has come already, and maybe they might ask, "Do you guys are really registered? Do you have a movement?" No, feminism is a belief, just like the way we have Christianity.
Right.
And people who believe in Jesus Christ, and people who believe in the African tradition, they believe in their gods. Feminists feminism is a belief, and is a belief that men and women deserve equal opportunities, equal rights, and should be given equal participations in all spheres of life.
Right. You spoke about feminism evolving, and it's been evolving for a very long time. Feminism is not a new thing. It's existed for a very long time. Even in South Sudan, I mean, when we look back into history and we listen to women like Ager Gum, who were speaking for women back then through music and in front of so many men, trying to challenge patriarchy at that time. Feminism existed even in South Sudan for a very long time. But just to give it a bit of history, tell us about the different waves of feminism since its introduction. It didn't start with, women talking about feminist governments. So, right. So it's been a very long road for feminists to even get here. So give us a little bit about the history of feminism in itself.
So yes, it's true that feminism started in the West, and it has evolved for a very long time. And when we talk about feminism and the evolvement, we talk about three waves. Mostly the first wave, and the feminists by that time were looking at the right to own property at that particular moment. They were also looking at the right to vote. If you look back in the history, women were not allowed to vote in the olden days. So that's the first wave of feminist movement. They were looking at basically on those two things. The second wave focused on equality and abolishment of all discrimination towards women and girls. And it continued all the way to the third wave, and the third wave we are in right now. We're talking about sexual harassment in the workplace. We are talking about the rights to bodily autonomy and what that means. We're talking about the rights for women to space their children and to determine and decide how many children they want to have, deciding who they want to marry, and this is the third wave we are in now. We're finding ourselves talking about reproductive rights for women, maternity leave. We're talking about equal pay for women and men, because we have also seen there's a lot of inequalities. You find a male colleague being paid more than a female colleague. So these are things now which are the third wave of feminists are fighting. It's not about right to vote anymore or to own property. Whereas I think, as I said earlier on, that we are at different stages. If you look at the Western feminism and the movement, the things they're looking at are different with things we're looking at in South Sudan. For example, in South Sudan, we're looking, as I said earlier, we're looking about the 35%. We still have an environment that is not conducive for the girl child to go to school. We're still having issues of incest.
Right.
We still have inheritance, and when somebody, when a spouse died, particularly if it is a man that died, the family will come and want to take over the resources that were left for the woman. And because she's a woman, she cannot really inherit. We're still talking about land being given to the male child or the male children, and the father will not see it as a problem to giving like a piece of it, to his daughter, for example.
Right.
Yeah, they're more advanced
We're
than we are.
absolutely still at the point of telling, having conversations about why it's wrong to sleep with a 12-year-old. Not even sleep. That's very incorrect.
Have sex.
Rape.
Yeah, have sex and convincing the men that it's unethical to have sex with an underage. They see that the desire for them to want to marry a child,
Right.
and to them that's okay. That is cultural, is prestigious, and so when feminists are talking and say, look, this is not right. Yeah.
Right. But
Isn't right.
it's not even, we're at the state, we're not just at the stage of still having those conversations with men. We're at the stage of trying to convince the law that it should punish people for doing this. And it should have laws that can protect young girls or women against abusers or rapists. We're still in that place where we're trying to convince the law. So we're extremely far behind. We're still at a very early stage. Let me say that.
We are at two stage where we're trying to really advocate for a conducive environment in terms of legislations, of laws that are non-discriminative, laws that are protecting women from all forms of violence. And then we also have another struggle dealing with cultures that have so long disadvantaged women and girls.
How do we do that? Because it seems there's a lot of work that is being done. I mean, feminists are not sleeping in this country. They're speaking more so today than before. Because also today the concept of feminism has now overwhelmed South Sudanese. Let me say that. Not all of them, but it's becoming a thing. It is overwhelming them, and we're starting to see feminism as something that is capable of making change. And then other people are seeing it as a threat to what is believed that we are as South Sudanese, right? So there's a lot of work being done, but what is missing? What do we need to do to continue moving forward, especially in the time of today where so much many anti-feminists have come out?
I think I need to upload the feminist movement in South Sudan in particular for recently coming out and try to really challenge some of the issues that are affecting women and girls in this country. However, I must say that is one thing to really air out your grievances. It's another that people sit on it and they don't do anything. Because then it gives the society the notion that this movement is just a barking movement. They're just like a dog barking outside, and nothing is going to happen in the end. So it's upon all stakeholders now, and particularly the government, to see that whenever the feminists are coming out to express their grievances on some of these things, that decisions and their demands are actually put into consideration. Because once they just remain in paper, okay, we will issue statements here and there, but if nobody is taking decisions on the things that the feminists or the women or the gender activists are demanding, then we still have a long way to do. What it will mean is that these demands be implemented, because in the end we have a constitution that guarantees the rights for women. So we need to start really challenging some of these things when they happen. For example, if there's a gender-based violence issue and it has reached to the hands of the authorities, we need to start seeing justice being provided to the victim. We need to start seeing jail time. We need to start seeing uh, men and perpetrators of child marriage being arrested, then the society will see and say, look, okay, their noise is actually yielding fruits. And then they will see and say, okay, maybe we need to change ways on how we do our things. And they will definitely change, and then that's when we'll get the society that we all want. A society that sees women and men as equal members of the society. And yes, there's a lot of hatred being driven towards feminists by misogynists, those who believe that women are to remain at the lower level. And they should never see light. They should just be at home, keep cooking, giving birth to children, and that's their role. They shouldn't be in the offices space. They shouldn't be earning money. So these are the people who are attacking the feminists. And then if you ask them, what is feminists taking away from them? And in reality, the simple question is, feminists are not taking away anything from any man. They're just demanding to be treated right, to be treated with respect, to be given the same opportunities. If it is education, they be given the same opportunities. If it is a political position, they be given the same equal opportunities. If it is choosing a marriage partner, they be given the same opportunities. Now, the question will be, then why are they afraid? Where is the hatred coming from? The feminists are not saying they are men. They are not men. They are women. But women who are members of the society, women who are members of this country, who contributes to what makes this country better.
I want to go back to the reception of feminism in South Sudan, where now we are seeing a lot of anti-feminists that come out, and it's not even anti-feminism. It seems they understand they understand feminism, but they do not understand feminists. They don't like feminism. They don't like feminists. They like the idea of feminism. That's what I'm getting from so much that goes on and is said on social media, let me say. But even more than that, what I continue hearing, I keep hearing all of the time, is South Sudan is an African cultural country. We have our cultures and our traditions. And feminists are bringing in Western ideologies to South Sudan and try and infiltrate our cultures. I keep hearing this all of the time. And first, let me hear your thoughts on it. I know you've heard this before, but what are your thoughts on it?
If we go back to definition of culture, Eva, that culture is a way of specific community or group of people do their things, from the food they eat, from the norms that govern them, from the type of houses they live in, from the clothes that they wear. And what gives somebody like me the thinking that, why are my people so against feminism? And yet they have been receptive of so many Western ideologies, Western cultures, Western civilization.
Language,
for example. We speak English
all the
right
time.
now. We're doing it now. How come I did not come here and speak my dialect?
Right.
That's Western civilization. We are reading books that have been driven from Western culture. And yet we have people who have PhDs, and most of their researches were actually done on the Western civilization or Western culture. We are driving cars. We are wearing suits as compared to our, what is it called? What we used to wear. We used to wear what?
The traditional clothing,
the
beads around your privates, and
the beads, the animal skin.
Right.
We used to eat our indigenous food, which is fading away now. We are eating chicken, fried chicken. We're dressing clothes. We are plaiting our hair. So many things about Western civilization, which they have actually taken so welcomely. But then when we're talking about issues of gender equality, when we're talking about the rights for women and girls, they are like, no, that's not Africa.
That's not ours.
So when you look at it, this is hypocrisy, for lack of words. That in one way, you are saying, okay, we are talking about democracy, we're talking about multipartial kind of a political environment. We want to have people to vote. All these are Western civilization. But then we want to keep a woman in the kitchen. We want to continue to control a girl child who she marries and at what age she marries. We want to continue to make sure that women have become properties, that even when her husband dies, she's inherited, and not seen as an equal member in the society. That, okay, as much as for men whose wives have died, they are given the opportunity to remarry. But here it's like, no, your husband dies, you remain in the family. You are a property of the family.
Of the family, right?
We still have human beings being called property of someone. And rather than viewing them as people who are full in their own rights, God-given rights. When girl is born and a boy child, they are born full human being, with all the organs, with all the capabilities apart from their biological sex. And that brings me to the question the person who asked and said, feminism are activating for equity. Equity is something different. Gender equality is something different. But they all contribute, and when we talk about biological differences, we know what the women's biological role are. And feminists are not saying, men, look, carry the child for 9 months. This is not what we're saying. We're not saying that it's okay, like it is your turn next year to carry a baby in your womb, because we know biologically men are not supposed to, they are not
capable
of because they don't have a womb. That's biological. And we are not questioning it. We are not questioning the creator who created a woman and a man differently in terms of, but we are saying, okay, we've been created differently, but we have the same capabilities. I can go to school and perform even better than my brothers. So is that capability and the being a full being that we are fighting for. Now, gender equity, on the other hand, which is, we really need gender equity in South Sudan, and he or she is right, is that why are we looking at the equity? Why are we talking more on women who have been at a disadvantage, or a girl child who is continued to be disadvantaged? Because historically, that's how our societies have been structured. They were set in a way that a woman is to remain as low as she can be and keep pushing them. So now when we talk about gender equity, we're saying, no, look, for so long, women in South Sudan and girls have been disadvantaged. So we really need to support them to come up to a level where they can have equal conversation. And the women of South Sudan, Eva, it's not Viola, it's not you as a feminist, it's not me. I'm talking about women who are the grassroots. I'm talking about that girl child in the village who does not even have a sanitary pad for her to wear to enable her to go and sit in class. We're talking about those women there that needs to be put at our level. For me, I am okay. I don't see myself that I have any limitation because I am born. But when we look at the percentage of women occupying these spaces that we are occupying now, it's a drop in the ocean. And that's why we're talking about gender equity. We're talking about investing in girls' child education, in projects such as Girls' Child South Sudan guest program. We are talking about how do we ensure that the girl in the village is safe to be able to walk from her house to go to school without being harassed on the way, or without being raped or being kidnapped. You know, the feminists in the Western countries, they are not worried about being forced elopement. That you are walking on the street, a man desires you and grab you in the name of marriage. And to some cultures in South Sudan, that's okay. If a man tries that in the Western countries, trust me, that man will be accused of rape,
Absolutely.
of abduction.
Right.
It will not be like marriage and for good intention. Here, some people, I'm surprised to say this, in some communities, they will see it as a privilege that the son of so-and-so has actually abducted our girl for marriage without her consent.
Right. Absolutely. Also, with all of the like what you said, basic human rights, you still find that many feminists, or actually all feminists in South Sudan, like you said, they're a drop in the ocean. It's not many of them at all. They are labeled radical feminists. And you ask yourself the question, I am asking you right now for my right to go to school, for her right to go to school. What I'm demanding is not to be abused, not to be raped, to divorce when I want, not to have children if I don't want to. You're asking for basic human rights. What happens when we come and ask for LGBTQ rights? Then what is like what do we label that? Because right now it's considered radical. It's already considered radical. You are extreme. You are of an extreme. Your ideologies are extreme. But I've not even reached there yet.
We haven't reached there, and it will take for us years to reach there, to the radical feminists that they define us. We are not radical feminists. We actually, most of us fall in between liberal and Marxist feminists.
And Marxist feminists.
And Marxist feminists.
What is what?
And maybe I'll just probably go through what they are. So we have 4 different types of feminists. One is the liberal feminists, and mostly these feminists are talking about removing the barriers that denies women to achieve gender, or that are obstacle to achievement of equality. That's the liberal one, and mainly they're talking about education, they're talking about employment, and they're talking about individuals' choices. Okay. Now, this particular group, which are the liberal feminists, they actually express their political freedoms. Like they want to be given the same, like for example, if your husband is in a different party, you have the right to be in a different
in an opposite
party. And whereas, like, which is it's a different, but yeah, like those political rights is deeply rooted on the notion that gender inequality and patriarchy underpins achievement of gender equality. So they look at how patriarchy undermines the achievement of gender equality. And patriarchy, maybe in a simple definition, is a belief that men are superior than women and girls by the fact that they are men and boys.
Right.
So they grow up knowing us right from like from childhood. They grow up knowing that I am the man, and this is a sister. She's the weaker gender. She needs to be protected. She needs to be that. So that's the patriarchal society that believes that men are superior than women, and men have the higher status than women. Now, so for the Marxist theory, it believes that feminism is underpinned by the level of status. So it looks at it at the economical level, from an economic perspective. That if I'm a feminist because I have an income, I'm educated. That's why I'm a feminist. That's why I have certain rights. Whereas a woman in the village shouldn't have those rights because she's uneducated. She lives in the village. Her needs are different. She doesn't have an income, and for that reason, she will continue to be discriminated. So it looks at it from economical aspect of it.
Right.
Now the third group of feminists are the one they call the radical feminists. And maybe let me just elaborate more what radical feminists are,
right.
and then we can determine at the end of the day whether South Sudanese feminists are radical or not. So the radical feminists, they see gender equality as a system where men benefit from female subordinates, okay, and which has been created through patriarchy. So again, patriarchy comes in, and like Marxist feminists, they don't see female subordination as being capitalism. So here we are seeing both capitalism and patriarchy being blamed why women are marginalized or are discriminated.
Right.
So it's a combination of economic aspect of it and patriarchy aspect of it. That's what Marxists, that's what radical feminists are. Now the dual system feminist theory is the notion that patriarchy has provided a system of control and law and order, where capitalism provides system of economy, and in pursuit of profit, both system inherently benefit men. So this dual one looks at all of it: the economy aspect, the patriarchal aspect, the legal aspect, and blame all that aspect to why we have we have gender inequalities, or we have existing or deeply rooted discrimination of women and girls in particular. So if you look at this, for me personally, I blame both. I come from a school of thought that it is both the legal environment driven by patriarchal mindsets that denies women the decision making, like denies them education, denies them the power to look for better opportunities to advance themselves, to achieve how they call some of us radical feminists. We're still not yet there.
Right.
We're still talking about girl child education and women owning a small percentage of government representations, and having so many men everywhere in the much privileged positions that can gain them wealth in their political aspirations. So we still have a lot to believe. We don't have radical feminists in South Sudan. What we have are a mixture of any of the two, or even sometimes three of them.
Right. That's what I was about to ask. Do you feel that sometimes you have to switch from this feminist to this one?
Mm-hmm. Depending on the situation. So you cannot really say I am this type of a feminist, because depending on the on the level you are. For example, the Western countries can say they are radical feminists because they have achieved laws that are very equitable. They have achieved at least a certain percentage of representations of women in major government positions. Of course, their vice president is a female, and who are male, female. So they can tell which group defined them. Whereas for us, we are fighting so many things. And as I said, we have a very big catch up to do.
Right.
These people have evolved for a very long time. This is a movement. Feminist movement is starting ground in South Sudan. It has been initiated before by people like Ageri, whom they are not even being mentioned anywhere. But it's now that it's coming into light. They were doing it then, but nobody knew that this is feminist, or wherever they were doing was laying a foundation for the current feminist movement.
Right. We still have women who cannot travel with their child without providing documents from the father or father figure in the country.
And even nationality.
Right.
That it's only the father that can say, this is my child.
My child, right.
And it's a South Sudanese, and they need to be given the nationality ID. And the other day I was discussing in a forum of women, and particularly me also have experienced this, where I was stopped to travel with my children, And do you know who was asking me? A female migration officer. Madam, we know about Hayalde. Okay, you can see clearly in their past, in their jinsia, I am the mother.
Mother, right.
You can confirm that I'm the mother. You are there asking for the father of those children. You are there asking if the father has given me the permission to travel with the kids. It's okay if they were asking both the mother and the father. If the reverse was the same, trust me, then we'll have an issue now to push an amendment of laws or other things. But then it's only the female parent that gets asked those questions. And men can sneak out of children without the woman knowing where he's taking the kids.
Right.
So those are things that feminists are fighting against. And these are basic rights that have been granted in all our legislations that we have.
To some sort. We're almost reaching our 1 hour, but before that, I want to ask you something very important, which is where, like what you said right now, the person who was asking you, where is the child's father, was a woman. And for that, okay, I can say, you know, she's doing her job. This is the law. She needs to do it. She has to ask. I get it. But then we have also situations or incidents that have happened to where we should understand the situation of the other woman more than any other person, right? There should be that level of relatability. But we've seen that there are women who do not support other women. I don't want to say feminism in particular, but they do not stand for other women. They do not stand for the rights of women. They do not stand for the freedom of women in general. I mean, they themselves are living within that box of patriarchy.
Yeah. So that's where the patriarchy comes in, Eva. That for me, I don't blame them. Is that I blame the way society has really socialized us. The kind of information they have been feeding to who's a woman, who's a good woman, who's a wife material, who is not. So those things keeps feeding. Also, look that these are women who have seen their mothers being beaten, their legs being broken, and they're beaten to the level where they miscarriage, and they know actually, the third child after you was actually miscarried because your father, battered your mother or something, and they stayed. So they have all been groomed to feel like that's how it's supposed to is. As a woman, those are things that you're supposed to take. I walk on the streets of Juba, and sometimes women ask me, why do you have 3 kids? Why do you have 3 children? Because for them, you get married, you're supposed to pop children every other
Immediately.
time. Immediately. That's it. That's you will be repaying back the dowry you are married with. And then so we don't blame them, because the society has defined already. They have this perception of who is an ideal South Sudanese woman.
Right.
An ideal South Sudanese woman is the one that doesn't decide anything without involving the brother or a male member of the family.
Right.
It's the wife that, even if she's going for a coffee to visit her fellow neighbor, she has to ask her husband, okay, you know what, I have to go there. It's the one that has to literally has no say when she's going to fall pregnant.
Right. In saying that, I want to bring up something that is very important, and it's related to an incident that happened recently when women came out and demanded justice for Alwel Messi, who had been involved in multiple incidents with her husband that had harmed her in many different ways, multiple times over just a few weeks, right? And then everyone saw. I had last week or the week before, I had Grace Aguil, who is a feminist as well and a gender activist. Fantastic, fantastic young lady who is working so hard in trying to trying to be a voice for women and support women as well. And we discussed how a clip came out, and this young lady, Aluel Messi, is allegedly back home with her husband, and she's happy, and so on and so forth. And I remember having many conversations with different people, different women. This is the one that really hit me the most. I think different women who were pretty much don't come back crying, don't come back and tell us anything. We try to support you and you don't want it. And I remember having those conversations, being very bothered that as women who are within a very small circle that communicates with many different women outside, right? Within South Sudan, you communicate with many different women, right? From grassroots, you communicate with women in corporate and many different sectors in the country. And we have seen firsthand how culture and the system is so patriarchal that it's very, very powerful. And it could almost be impossible for someone to win against it, right? Even if you want to challenge it, even when you want to challenge it, that might end up with you actually being in a casket. That's how powerful it is. So I always think that it's very important that even when other women are not able to challenge the system, we still embrace them. You know, because we're aware of where you're at. We are very aware of how powerful this culture is.
So there've been a lot of issues with the scenario you have mentioned, and it's that, you know, with that we've seen how violence, and particularly domestic violence, was termed as a family issue. And it's an issue that should be resolved between the family members, and they have ways of resolving them. And to them, they feel like they have issues. Now, on the other hand, Eva, like, we have to be very clear that domestic violence or any physical harm towards any other human being in South Sudan in particular is a crime.
Right. It's illegal. It's a criminal act.
And it's a criminal act that needs to be prosecuted using the law. And all perpetrators of violence, whether it's a woman violating a man or a man violating a woman, must all be brought to justice. The legal procedures to take its course, and the law must be implemented. Now, what hurts about issues of domestic violence is how certain group of people feel the urge and the power that is their right, you know, to conflict harm on another human being. It's not because I'm a feminist, but even the fact that you're a human being, you wouldn't want to stab someone with a knife, and you think that's okay. Something must really, really be wrong on you to think that any human being
has the right to do so.
And any human being should go through that, and you don't really condemn it. So yes, it was an eye-opener situation. That it shows how our societies are, that we keep quiet. I keep quiet when I know my neighbor is going to kill my wife, and you don't even come in to try to, you know, like to put them apart and save and rescue that woman and say that's a family issue.
Even worse, you make an excuse for the neighbor for why he's doing it.
Yeah. Or even the man will be like, this is my family affairs, why are you coming here? Well, the person you're trying to inflict pain is a human being. If that person dies, South Sudan loses, you know, one of its population. if that South Sudanese woman died, the children would become motherless.
Right.
So there's a lot, and on issues of violence is something that we must all, as a South Sudanese, and here not feminists, we must all condemn it, because it affects the society as a whole.
Yes.
It's not just women.
Right. It affects everyone in the country. Absolutely. We have about 2 minutes to go. I want you to give me your last word to everyone in South Sudan on feminism in South Sudan in general.
Okay, so my final words will go to anti-feminists out there, and those who are calling themselves anti-feminists. Actually, it's like a movement evolving right now. That this is not a war. It's not that we are not fighting you because you are a man. We are fighting the level of how you look at women and the way you take your status quo, and we'll try to protect it. That's what feminists are against. We aren't taking away anything from you guys. So feminists are not taking away the fact that you are a man, for example. We're just saying, yes, you're a man, I'm a woman, we are both equal members of the family. Together we are partners, we bring children together, and for that virtue, we need to treat each other equally. We need to give each other the same respect. Like the way you want to be treated as a husband, that's the way your wife needs to be treated as a wife. So it's not that the feminists are taking away men's spaces or are taking away men power. No. We are just claiming what rightfully belongs to us, because we are human beings, we are South Sudanese, and we are a very important population for our country. That's my final words.
Thank you so much, Viola, for being here with us. South Sudan, I'm going to leave you with those last words because they are very important, and you need to hear nothing else but that. If you're a woman, stand for women, stand for all women, stand for other women, stand for more women as well. And if you're a man, accept that women have rights in this country. Women are humans in this world. Accept it. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Eva Lopa. This is Gender Talk 211, Advanced Youth Radio, 99.9 FM. Have a great night.